USA Emergency Broadcast Network, your source for reliable disaster preparedness information.
The views and opinions expressed on this program are not necessarily the views of this station, its management, sponsors, or other hosts. If you have any comments or suggestions about this program, please contact us at radio@usaebn.org. That's radio@usaebn.org.
Welcome to a new Zeta report here on USA Emergency Broadcasting Network. We're live first Mondays of every month. Zeta report is a partnership between USA Emergency Broadcasting Network and Zeta Talk and ZetaTalk.com. I'm pleased to welcome back to the show Nancy from Zeta Talk and PulseShift.ning.com. Nancy, welcome back.
Hi, I'm so pleased to be here. So, folks, we have an interesting hour ahead of us talking about the cover-up over Nibiru, the cover-up history. First, let me read a disclaimer. In partnership with USA EBN, Zeta Talk and the Zeta Report will be discussing the challenges of living on a planet beset with change, rising seas, increasing earthquakes, and volcanic activity, weather gone wild, and the worry of what to do in a worst-case scenario. We will also inject Zeta Talk prophecy on what is coming next and advice on readiness plans and safe locations. Whenever Zeta Talk is quoted, please remember that prophecy is not fact. It is opinion. It only becomes fact when it happens. The Zetas are remarkably accurate, but have been wrong on occasion. Bear that in mind. For more information on this subject, please visit ZetaTalk.com or the Zeta Report on YouTube. Questions from the chat and issues raised in the chat will be addressed toward the end of the hour after the main feature has been presented. As Hermione said when first arriving at Hogwarts School of Witchcraft and Wizardry, she read about it in a book, Hogwarts, A History. For those new to the Nibiru story, dazed and confused about all the claims and counterclaims, this is Nibiru Coverup, A History. It all started, per the Zetas, when aliens made contact with a newly formed MJ-12 during the Roswell era. They told MJ-12 that Nibiru was real, was inbound, and would arrive around 2003, which it did. The cover-up over Roswell is parallel to the cover-up over Nibiru. A true story followed by lies, alternative stories, and disinformation, and assassinations. Armed with information from the Zetas that Nibiru would arrive in 2003, MJ-12 went looking. They sent aloft an infrared scope and peered in the direction from whence it was supposed to come, the Orion constellation. The famous 1983 article announcing their find on the front page of the Washington Post was quickly countered with bluster. The cover-up had begun in earnest. There were no perturbations in the outer planets known to ancient astronomers for centuries. It was all just a math error. Let me quote this Washington Post front page story. It was published also December 31st, 1983, and you can find it on microfiche toward the bottom of the page. Mystery heavenly body discovered. A heavenly body possibly as large as the planet Jupiter and possibly so close to Earth that it would be part of his solar system has been found in the direction of the constellation Orion by an orbiting telescope aboard the U.S. infrared astronomical satellite. So close, in fact, that it would be the nearest heavenly body to Earth, beyond the outermost planet Pluto. If it's really that close, it would be part of our solar system. The second observation took place 6 months after the first, and suggested the mystery body had not moved from its spot in the sky near the western edge of the constellation Orion in that time. When IRAS scientists first saw the mystery body and calculated that it could be as close as 50 billion miles, there was some speculation that it might be moving toward Earth.
Nancy, although that article was, I think, a day later, They put it in the December 31st edition on the bottom of the front page. It's like, oh yeah, we published it on the front page. And like, who's reading the newspaper on New Year's Eve? But anyway, you can find it on microfiche at your local library. Just look up. It's Washington Post, correct? 1983,
Yes, it is.
December 31st.
Yes, that's correct. Yeah.
And then there was
December
a
30
follow-up article the next day or the day after talking about how they screwed it up. You can actually find that. But it doesn't give all the details that you just gave. So.
Yeah, they quickly had to. They were so discombobulated by that discovery, and that there was something, and they said it's either, very cool and close at hand, or far away and hot, and making all these noises, but. Then at one point the guy says, let me explain that it's not inbound. I want to throw cold water on that. Well, how can they say it's not inbound or it's not, approaching us if they can't even say what it is or whether it's close at hand or way out there, So they were upset, but the cover-up descended quickly, All righty. The exact location of the 1983 find was never revealed in the news, which said only that it was discovered near the western edge of the constellation Orion. But it was identified by the Zetas in their 1997 path diagram. They indicated to me what I should poke at, poke, and they said this is where it was in 1983, etc. And they put it at the lower part of Orion's bow, and that is where, when they discovered Planet 9, they said this is where its perihelion is, or aphelion, yet that was not revealed in the 1983 article at all. The exact location, they said the western edge of Orion. Well, what is that? It could be anywhere to the, Anyway, it wasn't specific, but the Zetas were very specific, and I was astonished when I saw that it matched up. Coincidentally, when Planet 9's gravity tug was revealed, the perihelion of this mass was identified at the bottom edge of Orion's bow, just where the Zetas had stated that NASA and JPL had found the inbound Nibiru in 1983. We are returning to 1983 as the cover-up unravels, again talking about this gravity tug out in the direction of Orion. After the decades following the 1983 confirmation that Nibiru was inbound, the search for cover-up excuses for the anticipated Earth changes began. The uproar over the supposed man-made CO2 cause for global warming was promoted. Per the Zetas, the official cover-up began with Reagan, who ordered by secret executive order that there should be a cover-up over the alien presence, and included a cover-up over the info about Nibiru, too. Thatcher and Reagan were pals, and her embrace of the global warming theory coincided with the UN's involvement in the matter. Al Gore subsequently jumped in to become the spokesperson. And I read, "The discovery of global warming. Prime Minister Margaret Thatcher gave global warming official standing when she described it as a key issue in a September 1988 speech to the Royal Society. She showed she meant it by increasing the funding for climate research. Thatcher was the first major world leader to take a determined position. The UN Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, IPCC, is established." Now notice the relationship. Roswell as a cover-up over the aliens, and that was 1947. And then they are chatting with aliens, and they chatted with them right after Roswell because there was a survivor of that crash. And before Roswell, they were chatting with what the Zetas say anyway, conniving aliens, or service to self conniving, not good-hearted, and they were trying to contact the U.S. military. They were trying to get their foot in the door, and then the Roswell crash introduced them to a different type of alien who was not threatening, not conniving, So they were getting different stories. MJ-12 was, but they finally sorted it all out, although it took them a long time, and then. Because they were hearing, at least from the good aliens at the service to other Zetas, my contacts, that it was going to arrive in 2003 and where it was coming from, they went up to take a look, and they found it. And then that was in 1983. 1988, we have the global warming coming out. And again, Reagan and Thatcher, this group, etc. So this is the cover-up history. You put down secret executive orders and say it's national security to talk about it. People don't talk about it. So many astronomers have been killed because it was executive order until very recently under Obama, 2012 or so, when he tried to get the truth out, and was constantly dealt with so many assassination attempts and the like, and was hushed, that nobody could talk about it. And you see that today. Astronomers, it's like stony-faced, and oh, no, if it was out there, we'd tell you about it. And all the amateurs are seeing Nibiru right next to the sun, coming at us. No, so you still have that going on. And they're terrified after that kind of an executive order to step forth. Okay. In 1994, a photo of the Nibiru complex was leaked to the public, but the cover-up claimed this was a photo of heaven. Quoting the Weekly World News in 1994, interesting photo, which I will have on my YouTube video tomorrow morning. Heaven photographed by Hubble telescope. Just days after Space Shuttle astronauts repaired the Hubble Space Telescope in mid-December, the giant lens focused on a star cluster at the edge of the universe and photographed heaven. That's the word from author and researcher Marcia Mason, who quoted highly placed NASA insiders as having said that the telescope beamed hundreds of photos back to the command center at Goddard Space Flight Center in Greenbelt, Maryland on December 26. This is 1994. The pictures clearly show a vast white city floating eerily in the blackness of space, and the expert quoted NASA sources as saying that the city is definitely heaven. In spite of official silence, agency insiders concede that NASA has discovered something that might alter the future of all mankind. They also confirmed that President Bill Clinton and Vice President Al Gore have taken a keen interest in the photographs and have requested daily briefings. Now, end of the quote. Now, it's a lovely picture. It was leaked. Once the picture was out, they had to explain it. Can you imagine the goofy explanation coming from NASA? Oh, that's heaven. What? What?
Right.
But they did. Anything but the truth. And what you see is not, it's not a constellation. It's not a galaxy. It doesn't make sense from any but the concept of Nibiru and its smarmy entourage of debris and moons and red dust and all swirling and all that. That's what it looks like, So they decked it out as heaven. In 2001, we are approaching 2003, the date when the Zeta said it would arrive. And they had put out in 1997 what we call the path diagram. And they pointed to where I should draw the line from where the IRAS team found it at the bottom of the bow, around, to the left, up toward the ecliptic, and then turning to be in a retrograde orbit, and coming around to where it would be seen in 2001, 2, and then 2003. Well, their estimates and their right angle and declination, which is what telescopes use to peer, were so accurate that when it was seen in the spring of 2003, it was almost spot on. I can't tell you. And now, even NASA, if they try to define where a comet is, even a known comet is going to go, they don't have that kind of accuracy. And this was 7 years earlier. So in the fall of 2001 to the spring of 2003, teams of Zeta Talk fans on several different continents went looking for Nibiru at the Zeta Talk coordinates. Since Orion was only visible at night during the winter months, the first winter was spent looking for a dim star from observatories in France, Canada, and the U.S., and they found it. On February 7th, 2001, An observatory in France imaged the Nibiru complex. The excited email stated, and I quote, "The Neuchâtel Observatory got it. They were very excited, wondering if it's a comet or a brown dwarf. Through the latest coordinates you gave, I'm going to ask for further details. The daughter of the astronomer reports that they suspect a comet or brown dwarf in the process to become a pulsar since it emits waves," end quote. Well, the astronomer was not given permission to release the image because there's a cover-up, and these astronomers are leaned on and like gun at the head, don't you dare, right? Then a try in the U.S., and that was France in February, and then we go on April 1st to Lowell, the famous Lowell Observatory. On the night of Sunday, April 1st, 2001, I reserved the historic Clark 24-inch telescope at the Lowell Observatory in Flagstaff, Arizona, for my own private viewing. As it turns out, the telescope operator was unable to point the Clark in the direction of Orion because there was a scaffold in the way which only the operator's supervisor was allowed to move. Oh, a scaffold in the way. Of course they knew we were coming there. This team was planning. We were going back and forth on email and ha-ha. Can they read email? You betcha. So we were blocked. Then we go to Vancouver. On April 8th, 2001, another confirmation via the Gordon Macmillan Southern Observatory in Vancouver. Since we were sharing our questions on Sci-Astro Usenet, it was no secret that the team was headed there. Almost comical stalling and blocking steps were taken by the Coverup crowd, and I'm reading you part of this email. I and a friend of mine made it down to the Gordon Macmillan Southern Observatory tonight and had what I believe was a very strange experience. I called the observatory around 7:30 and spoke to some guy and asked if it was okay to look at an object near the constellation Orion. He said there was some large pipe that had been placed in front of the observatory and was not sure if he could swing the telescope in the direction, but that we might be able to see something. Here we go again with scaffolding in front of, so you can't look in that direction. And it was clear where we wanted to look. I mean, it was on the web, the Zeta Talk coordinates, etc. All right, another month goes by, May 9th, 2001, and the person who went to the Vancouver Observatory went back there for a lecture, and the reaction of the operator that said, "Oh, I'm sorry, I can't show it to you," was very revealing, and I quote, "At the observatory tonight, I also saw the original operator that I had dealt with. When I approached him to say hi, I thought he was going to have a heart attack. I swear he almost went into the women's bathroom to avoid contact with me. I hope he's not being leaned on too hard." Well, you bet he was. Okay, infrared. The next winter was spent trying to secure infrared imaging in France and in the U.S. Again, Nibiru was found where expected. On January 19, 2002, a student at the Haute-Provence Observatory in France took infrared images, which he was able to provide to the team. No one was watching a student, so he was not blocked. Compared it to the star charts, and it was a new object, like a dim star, but not in the star charts. Now, he was a student, and he got his hands on this equipment, and nobody was looking for that. I think I don't know what they were looking for. Maybe somebody coming from the outside asking if they could have a peek and all that kind of thing. But he got away with it because he slipped between the cracks. It was like, oh, who did that? The maid? Oh, wow. So we got our first infrared. Then we also got another one from Florida from a skeptic, who took it and then said, provided me with the image and said, "All right, Nancy, where is it? Where's Nibiru?" And the Zetas told me where to poke and point, and it turned out that was the coordinates, and there was an object there that was not on the star charts. So we had two confirmations in infrared, and there was another woman who tried to go to South Africa. she reserved that big telescope down there. She was in Zaire and went down with a friend to South Africa at the appointed hour to look and was told, sorry, even though you have reservations, we're not letting you in. So because it was no secret that she was going there was email and postings and the like, she was blocked. She told me later that she went back and got a different observatory to look and did find Nibiru infrared where expected. Okay, in 2003, the last winter was spent, that's 2002 to 2003, that spring, garnering CCD images via a scope rented in the U.S. over there in Arizona. And again, it was tracked precisely where the Zeta said it would be found. By late March 2003, it was visible in the night sky in the evening, and reports came in from around the world, and they did. I see it. I see that cluster. I saw it personally twice. Once in a cornfield, and once I came back and went across the street. And it was Orion, and up sort of to the upper right is that red star, I think it's called Aldebaran, and this was much lower than Aldebaran, and it was kind of a fuzzy red cluster that would fade in and out, which is, Nibiru has its own light source, which is itself, and also shrouded by all this red dust, etc. And people from all over the world, just raved about it and sent in their reports. Anyway, let me read a couple of these. I am located in a remote area near the Amazon called, it's just north of Brazil. The area has the cleanest air in the world, and the sky is pure dark and blue. I've checked the coordinates from Zeta Talk about Planet X, and for my surprise, the position and accuracy supported by them is astonishing. The reddish star is visible naked eye in this region, exactly below Aldebaran star, and some natives are calling this reddish object Herculebus, telling its effects on the planet planet Earth will be a cataclysm of unprecedented proportions.
That was in the Amazon, huh? So
and that was high in the. He was a pilot. He was a pilot, and
okay.
and I'm not. Then there's another one that looked at with 10x binoculars, which are like a telescope and could see it, and they were taking photos as it came in the spring of 2003. Some of our very best photos are that inbound complex. With it looks like it's got shoulder pads on either side, and it's a double helix as it swirls. And more than one photographer got that, and that's what you see also today, in some of the photographs is these shoulder pads on either side. So it's the two dominant moon swirls, and the moons kind of go into a dance with each other, and they form like a long tube. Well, the two dominant moons on either side, and just like our planets try to stay apart from each other by different orbits and the like, that's what these moons do too around Nibiru. And then other trash comes around, and they all get to like a square dance and swinging around, and when these tubes turn toward Earth, and the sunlight bounces down through them, it kind of acts like a flashlight, and the light intensifies. It doesn't escape. It goes beep beep from side to side down the tube, because the tube is surrounded by red dust and trash. So you have this reflecting light bouncing down the tube, and it comes out the end like a flashlight, and this is the most brilliant orbs that are seen around the sun. People say, well, there's something up in the upper left, or something over there to the left and above, and well, that's not Nibiru. The tail itself, Nibiru is usually at the 4 o'clock position to the sun, and the tail blows out from the North Pole, and it goes under the sun and wraps around to the left and then up toward the top. So you see these moon swirls often to the left and on the top. And there's another moon swirl, which we call the check mark, that shows up in photos, and that's because there's two different moon swirls bouncing off a central point. It is very distinctive, So those of us who've taken a lot of photos and looked at a lot, we practically have given names to these guys. All right, moving on. 2003. Observatories were on notice not to give evidence of Nibiru. I mean, because had everybody in the world looking and reporting, right? It was like, oh, the cover-up was tightening the screws. But on May 26, 2003, a second sun sighting was captured in California on the Mount Wilson Observatory in San Gabriel Canyon above L.A. Within a day, the webcam had been pointed in a different direction. Instead of pointing where you can see the sun coming up and see what was coming up at the 4 o'clock position to the sun, it was pointed off somewhere different. You couldn't see the sunrise at all, right? But the observatory folks had a sense of humor. They hung a basketball in front of the cam and labeled it Planet X. And people,
that's nice.
We have those photos. It's cute. Okay. Blame the sun was another cover-up excuse promulgated by NASA. This excuse stumbled through solar cycle 24, which started in January 2008. It was to be the maximum from 2012 to 2016, and NASA wanted to blame all the increasing Nibiru-caused Earth changes on the sun. But sunspot activity was almost nil, and by 2010, cycle 24 was on track to be the lowest sunspot cycle in a century. Now, mind you, they still, they were saying, oh, every time we'd have electromagnetic pulse, it's the sun, and then people would look at the sun and it's, asleep, but they kept it up, and it was very disappointing for NASA because that was the big hype, and like global warming is another one. They say all scientists agree. Well, no, they don't. They caught the IPCC of the UN in fraud, and they're doctoring their data. And if you actually poll the scientists, most of them were saying, no, there is no global warming going on. In fact, it appeared almost more cooling and the like. So it's a big fraud, but the media's in on the cover-up. And this fake news stuff, it didn't start with Trump, I tell you that. It's
sure.
been ongoing. Talk about, 9/11, who killed JFK, and on and on. The cover-ups are nothing new. So the media is lying to us so much.
Well, the little quick note on the global warming / human-induced climate change. A lot of the past 37 years of actual temperature data, hard data out there from the Earth, all over locations, obviously put together by scientists. The past 37 years show a very steep increase in temperature over the last part of the chart, the last 10 years, where Planet X / Nibiru is coming into our solar system. Well, if you take the actual 38 years or 58 years, add the 37 and the 21 previous years before that, the 21 previous years were actually a global cooling event for that section, and then it comes into global warming, and then a hard spike at the end of that chart, proving, quote unquote, proving the scientists right of the IPCC. That being said, that doesn't explain the increase in volcanic activity, the increase in meteor activity / fireballs, the increase in earthquake and seismic activity. Those are not explained by the global warming / climate change theory.
Precisely. Yeah, so true. And actually, when they first started this up, back in the mid-1990s, the Zetas were saying the heat is coming from the core of the Earth up, not from the increased temperature of the air. And there were some scientific reports that showed this, that scientists were saying, I go and the surface is thus, and I dig down 12 inches, and the temperature is that. So the permafrost was melting, and that goes down 2 feet and below, and it was melting from the bottom up, not from top down, not the air pressure at all. So it was tinkered scientific data. Anyone who wanted to counter that, there was a couple of UK scientists, who were assassinated by trolley, I might say, and I guess you say in the UK. They were pedaling to work with their bikes, and they were just run down. by a truck and sideswiped and they worked on this project, and almost one of them was thrown down the stairs, and they said, well, somehow he slipped and he fell down his stairs,
Right.
So, and he was hale, hearty person, out jogging all the time, that kind of thing, and it was clearly an assassination, a warning to others. Keep your mouth shut, because they were privy to information that countered, what the official line was, and if they were prone to tell the people the truth, well, then they were killed. And hundreds of people have been killed keeping this cover-up and going, and it's still strong as a rock, even though the increased visibility of Nibiru is putting the whole cover-up in danger. And the increase, as you said, volcanoes, earthquakes, the wobble where it goes back and forth, and the sun is too far north or too far south at sunrise or sundown, and people notice this, and you try to write to the weather station or an observatory and talk to an astronomer. Oh, no, you're mistaken. Honey, you just don't know how to read that stuff. We know. We're educated and we're the experts, and just shut up and sit down. That's not happening. You're delusional. They get they get this treatment. And believe me, I get the email from people. All right, sunspots, blaming the sun.
Well, actually, you got the treatment. We'll talk about that later in the episode, but there's plenty of mud that's been thrown at Zeta Talk over the years. We'll get into that.
Oh, yeah. I wear with pride the fact that Dick Morrison of NASA, I'm the only person that, to my knowledge, that NASA ever said, just don't listen to X. And that's me.
Right.
Don't listen to Nancy Leader. No. Anything no. Now, I mean, they don't say that about anybody, but they said it about me, and repeatedly on interviews. So I guess I'm that kind of a threat that they have to say, don't listen to me, right? I mean, if I'm just a wacko, why do you have to warn people, right? Yeah, okay.
Right.
So getting back to sunspots, NASA was forced to coordinate their doctored reports on solar emissions with anticipated magnetic blasts from Nibiru, and found themselves issuing their warnings after the electromagnetic pulse had struck, the EMP. Their attempts were frankly obvious. Nevertheless, NASA had the press issue dire warnings in 2009, citing a past EMP in 1859 called the Carrington event. Quoting the New Scientist in 2009, Space storm alert, 90 seconds from catastrophe. The grids were not built to handle this sort of direct current electricity. The greatest danger is at the step-up and step-down transformers used to convert power from its transport voltage to domestically useful voltage. The increased DC current creates strong magnetic fields that saturate a transformer's magnetic core. The result is runaway current in the transformer's copper wiring, which rapidly heats up and melts. This is exactly what happened in the Canadian province of Quebec in March 1989, and 6 million people spent 9 hours without electricity. But things could get worse, much worse than that. The most serious space weather event in history happened in 1859. It is known as the Carrington event, after the British amateur astronomer Richard Carrington, who was the first to note its cause. Now, get ready, 2009, this is when the maximum was going to be building up, and we had just passed the minimum, and they are telling people everything, all this electromagnetic pulse. But, and you could, we were keeping a log. There would be whammo, an electromagnetic pulse that would take down a plane or spin an electric train off its tracks by speeding up or whatever was going on, and then they would say, oh, that was the sun. And you'd look at, but too late. I mean, after the fact, they're telling you it was the sun. Why do they have all these probes up there and all these collecting this ray and that ray and charts and all that? It was pretty pathetic. And then after a while, they just stopped doing that because they were so off all the time. They couldn't coordinate it right. Jump to 2012, when Obama determined to announce that Nibiru was real and at hand. It had frankly become obvious. The years that passed with numerous obvious assassination attempts against Obama's life. After the 2015 Jade Helm exercises came and went, which were in place to deal with riots after the announcement was made, it was clear that Obama lacked courage, as the Zetas put it. The announcement admitting Nibiru would not come by Obama's hand. Those who wanted to cover up, began what the Zetas called who wanted the cover-up to end, began what the Zetas called a multi-pronged approach to the problem. Astronomers and this started in early 2016 with the Planet 9 announcement. Astronomers from around the world participated. They had long been silenced and were eager to have a role. The prongs began in January 2016 with the announcement that a gravity object termed Planet 9 had been discovered. We are back to 1983, pointing to that spot just to the west of Orion, where the IRAS team had discovered Nibiru. That same spot is Planet 9's perihelion. That same spot is where the Zeta said the IRAS team had located that mystery object out there. So it's like we're going back, we're cycling back, because this whole time, how many years, we're talking 30 years, that it's been, oh no, there's nothing out there tugging, no, the ancient astronomers were wrong. And even though, long period comets would pull out of that area, and all the outer planets would hove in that direction, and clearly there's something pulling, oh no, and now they're saying, oh yes, there's something, the truth is coming out. They're trying to get around to the truth, because if they don't, everyone's going to say, you've done a cover-up all this time. I bought a house on the coast and I paid down my down payment and I can't get out of that mortgage, and now you tell me there's going to be coastal flooding, and they come with their guns and their rifles and they hunt down the astronomers who lied to them, right? That's what they're afraid of. So now they're trying to say, oh, we just didn't notice it. The whole thing that's been going on in 2016 has been that they're saying, oh, the Hubble and the WISE and the Spitzer and all these, they're looking way, way out there. And, oh, it was right under our feet the whole time. No wonder we didn't notice it. It slipped in between the toes, And they're playing that game. They're trying to come around to where they can say that, so shrouded by red dust we didn't see it. And all these amateurs, we just thought, papa, what do they know? We have a busy, long day. We didn't have time to follow up on all these Photoshopped things, So they're trying to say they looked out far away and it was close in and they couldn't see it. And that's what they've been going at all year 2016. Over a decade has passed since Nibiru was photographed by amateurs as it arrived in the inner solar system in 2003. Despite all the suppression by the wealthy elite and the political establishment, the public is increasingly seeing evidence of Nibiru. It's time for the truth to be known, but the battle still rages on. NASA gave a presentation on February 22nd of this year to announce they had discovered 7 potentially life-bearing planets orbiting the TRAPPIST star. Quoting NASA, NASA's Spitzer Space Telescope has revealed the first known system of 7 Earth-sized planets around a single star. 3 of these planets are firmly located in the habitable zone, the area around the parent star where a rocky planet is most likely to have liquid water. Now, I watched that, and what was interesting is they were booked for an hour and they closed down after 40 minutes. What about the last 20 minutes? You mean they had no questions?
Right.
They gathered this, and everybody, it was clear. I mean, I have a copy of the schedule, and there it says from 1 to 2, NASA, blah, blah, blah. What happened? According to the Zetas, they were about to get into questions where people would say, well, what about that thing next to the sun? No, Nibiru doesn't exist. And they were told to sit down and shut up by the Trump administration, who got wind that they were going to do some kind of... And you notice this February 22nd, which is days before February 26th, when what Andre and I are going to talk about, my appearance on the American Heroes channel was to, premiere, and they were trying to throw mud at it, so it seems to be less a pro-Nibiru announcement than a pro-extraterrestrial life announcement. However, Trapezus was described as being an ultra-cool dwarf, which fits the description of Nibiru, which is a cross between a planet and an unlit star, 4 to 5 times the diameter of Earth and 23 times as massive. And the Zetas call it a smoldering brown dwarf. But that's like trying to say such a thing would exist. But in 1995, you should have seen the garbage thrown at me if I said it's neither a planet nor a sun, and it's a smoldering brown dwarf. There is no such thing, foolish woman. So we had that.
Yeah.
Now they say, there it is. Nobody ever said, sorry, Nancy, we called you an idiot, and all along you knew what you were talking about. So, on Sunday night, the 26th, the American Heroes Channel, which had come to film here at my home on May 29th of last year, and they were wanting to do a series, and this was called Planet X, but they did use the term Nibiru at the start and toward the end. And they allowed that I had the first appearance right at the start saying, I have been told that I am the founder of the Planet X / Nibiru theory, which I have been told that by a BBC editor. And I said, what? And I went to research it, and that's what Wikipedia says, too. So in other words, I was the first person to say, what was discovered in 1983 is Nibiru, and it's inbound, et cetera, and put all that together. And now they're, everybody's calling it Nibiru, but back then it was Planet X, number 23 or something like that. So they
for a while
presented,
there.
Yeah.
Sorry, Nancy. I was just going to say for a while there, even. Mainstream, well, not mainstream. I guess it was most of the people that were covering the inbound object we're calling Nibiru. We're going off of the NASA designation for what they called Planet X after they had Nemesis, which would be the opposite, our binary sun, way out there that the Nibiru system orbits around us in a highly elliptical orbit. Us and that other star. That was Nemesis way out there. That was the technical term. The search for Nemesis was a big thing in around that 1980s article. But wasn't it NASA that designated Planet X as the system and then put it in the wrong spot on the charts where they think they could have found it, or maybe if I don't know. It's so hard to track all the disinfo. But call it this, call it Nibiru, call it that.
They've used the term Planet X a dozen times to describe IRAS and all kinds of little rocks out there, and it was done deliberately so that if you type Planet X into the search engine, you got so much trash, and every little rock, and then back in 1980, 81, there was in a lot of scientific magazines, and I know because I researched this, the search for Nemesis, and Nemesis was this tug out toward Orion. And when they found something out there, which is in the right direction, then when they there's a lot of confusion about that. We have our sun has a binary which is out there, 18.74 Sun-Pluto distances out in that direction. And when they found Planet 9, they said, 20 Sun-Pluto distances out in that direction, which I said is Zeta's right again. Look at that confirmation, not only the direction but the distance. And they said, it's Planet 9 coming in, and it's probably 4 or 5 times the size of Earth or whatever. And then they got all confused about just exactly where it was, and maybe it's moved over towards the constellation Zeta, and how could it move and be that close? And deliberate confusion, but. So what you have to remember is we do have a binary out there, which for the lack of any other term, let's call it nemesis. But the
Right.
reason they called it nemesis way back then was because they were saying something comes through the solar system every now and then and creates havoc. Look at the asteroid belt all whacked up, right? So that's where the term nemesis comes from. So out there is this dark binary, which does not travel, just sits there. It's a static binary dance, our two suns. and then in comes Nibiru, which is a very massive planet, which is a smoldering brown dwarf, 23 times as massive as Earth, 4 to 5 times the diameter, but it's really more of a planet, and it has this entourage of a couple of dozen moons and swirls and all this red dust and trash, and so some people say it's a Nibiru complex. It's like a star system. It's not, because it can emit a light of its own, a dim light, so it's confusing because you have an unlit a binary of our sun out there, which nobody can see because it's black as coal. And then you have Nibiru, which is a smoldering brown dwarf and emits heat and light and has all this trash around it, but it's not a sun. And these moons don't go around and around like a planet at all. They're always trailing behind, so they call it a constellation or a star system. And there's all this terminology. Then you have what the ancients called the Nibiru. That's the ancient Sumerian terminology, Sitchin and the like. And some people, Wormwood, the great destroyer, the red planet, and and so you have all this confusion. But NASA tried to confuse the issue by calling everything it found after 1983 Planet X.
Everything was Planet X.
Yeah, just a few. Right, They even had an Operation Planet X in Iraq in 2003. So the military knew about it too. So they were joking around. Anyway, Sunday night we had, and they're replaying this every Sunday night. They are did this past Sunday night, and I think through this month or so, you're going to be able to see that Planet X series in American Heroes channel. It's a series called How the World Ends, and they're dealing with pandemics and nuclear and, stuff flinging in from the solar system. And they had me and they had Marshall Masters on. I joke around and say, buy my book, Marshall Masters, because he sells. You go to his website and it's Here's My Books. And they filmed him, and I loved it, lecturing to a small group of people, about a dozen, in a room that could have held 100. And they didn't come there for free. He charged entry fees, right? And it's astonishing. He says anybody who's not in a bunker is going to die from X-rays when this thing passes by. So unless you're in a bunker, you're going to be dead. I said, X-rays? I mean, where did you get this from? Everybody's going. I said, oh, my God, he sold his soul to the bunker manufacturers, right? To the bunker companies.
Yeah. Right.
He's buy my book, attend my lecture, and by the way, you have to have a bunker, and meanwhile, behind his back, he's getting cash for saying that. I was astonished. So he's always been clutching the establishment somehow, So then they had an astronomer who said, no, if it was out there, we'd see it, we'd tell you. And then they had bad astronomy guy, Phil Plait, who is such an idiot, and his job is to debunk Zeta talk. They had me debate him on Coast to Coast. And I remember that George Norrie, or was it Art Bell, gave me each of us a chance to ask the other a question. And the Zetas were kicking me and saying, ask him about the frozen mammoth that was found, the baby mammoth that was found in Finland, frozen in the ice and snow and just flash frozen, right? So I did. I said, what do you make of that? And he said, oh, it's an urban legend. I said, but it was on Discovery Channel. No, it was an urban legend. So the bottom line is the guy's an idiot. He gets his money from NASA, but he gets NASA grants. That's how, he functions at the university level on NASA grants. And all these astronomers, if they want to work at an observatory and get paid, and do something besides flip hamburgers at McDonald's, They got to lie, 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 and they do.
I also found interesting from the American Heroes special too that it's the subject's being treated more so as a scientific phenomenon, with people witnessing what's happening with Earth changes and seeing the Planet X or Nibiru complex and photographs and different satellite images. But it also looks like it's, from Google searches to Wikipedia to television shows, and not to mention Russian TV, basically the last 5 or 6 years, not just pretty much being out front with the incoming planetary system. It seems like the Nibiru cataclysm is getting a fresh look, from, maybe awakened eyes out there, or maybe some folks that have control over the information, such as Google, that can, not quash the information or show it how it ranks. I know that Zeta Talk has always done well with online rankings, and they're in every language and have mirror sites all over the place. But how's it going lately? I mean, last 5 or 6 years, last couple of months seem like a whole new world out there for truth.
Yeah, well, in January of 2016, that's when what the Zetas called the multi-pronged approach, and they said it will not be able to be stopped because astronomers all over the world. We just recently, about a month ago, had an article came out from a doctor. I can never pronounce his name, Dr. Zaharovich or something like that, and he said, this hunk of rock called asteroid 2016 WF9 that was supposed to pass in February 25th, and he said it'll pass in February 16th instead, and it's from Nibiru. It's trash that was flung off from Nibiru, and instead of going retrograde, because Nibiru has a retrograde orbit and a retrograde rotation and everything, even the tail swirls in a retrograde manner. He said it changed from retrograde to be the way our planets work, which is counterclockwise. Okay. So we got Nibiru in the headlines, retrograde, and he was an astronomer, a Russian. But then people came out, the supposed Russian astronomer, or so-called, or self-identified, or, whatever they, because the cover-up is alive and well and very much in control of most of the media. There is a battle going on. There are people who want the common man to hear about this, so that they can have strong survival communities. It takes a while to get goats and chickens and learn how to handle them, to put in gardens and learn how to handle seed. It takes a while, and if you have to move away from the coastline and go to Uncle Bob's farm, it takes a while to pack up and convince the wife you got to go. These things are not, if it's done overnight, you're going to have everybody standing in the rain, a lot of pneumonia and death and looting and all that garbage. And responsible people don't want that going on. They want the truth out there so that strong people who can establish survival communities will get going, and the weak, can come trailing in afterwards and at least maybe get a cup of soup. This special on American Heroes, which was, I thought, very well done. I'm sure they were under orders to present, all sides. And they had a guy in British Columbia who clearly was a fan of Zeta Talk because he had dug a trench and showed how to cover it with boards and the like, and was talking about how that would be better than anything. Never mind Marshall Masters saying that he'd be fried by X-rays unless he paid money to bunker builders, right? So, and he showed, you could see that he had a distillation rig in his, and he had a shipping container full of all kinds of stuff, seeds and everything. So, this was way back in the early days of Zeta Talk in 1990s. We talked about shipping containers. And when I was on TV for New Zealand, in fact, the people that they interviewed that were up in the hills had purchased a shipping container, kind of buried it halfway into the hill, and had all their stuff in there. So here was another guy, a shipping container guy, avid fan, and he was great, up there in the woods of British Columbia, and he said he'll be a survivor, and what he's doing is something he was a model for others to follow. So good for American heroes to show that. Yeah.
Exactly. And if you want to find that, you can go to, I think it's under ahc.go.com to get, if you want to see it on your mobile device. Is that right?
Yeah. Their website is AHC and AHC TV, and if you
okay.
and they will stream it AHC TV GO, but you have to have a internet a television provider that is part of their list. I get Dish and it's not in there, but I noticed that the first in the series, which is Nostradamus, they just unlocked it, which means you can go into that site AHC TV GO for the American heroes, and there it is, an unlocked. And then I suspect, since it was the first, that every week another version will be, another in the series will be unlocked, and it'll be a freebie, for anybody, I hope.
Right.
So
Let's see.
Anyway, it's. I was thrilled at the treatment. I've been on TV in Moscow, New Zealand, South Korea, Sri Lanka, in the U.S., but only in like Strange Universe in the middle of the night. I mean, some wacky little TV program that doesn't get any, traffic. And I have not been on main channel in the U.S. This is my first, and I was thrilled with the start. And already people are wandering up and down my porch saying, "Are you Nancy Leader? Were you on TV recently?" And then they have 20 questions, so it's a nightmare. I've got my posted keep out no trespassing signs, but I haven't poked them into the ground yet, which is just now thawing, because that happens, I'll have to get
it might be
the German Shepherd dog barking.
It's gone. What a full circle. People were running away from Nancy Leader 20 years ago, saying she's crazy, and now they're coming to you for questions right up to your house. Yeah,
there's always been a mix, fans and skeptics, and over the years there's been more fans than skeptics, and it's true because there's so many contactees that have been told by their visitors. According to the Zetas, in 2008 it was 12,000 contactees, and now it's over half the populace, over 3.5 billion. And they say something's wrong, the weather is weird, and blah, 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 and they get told about the pending passage, so they already know deep down. And so what this gentleman wanted to say is, your son mentioned in the TV show that he had flood dreams until he moved away from the coast, and I said, that's very common, and it's obviously because the aliens have said you're too close, the big tidal waves are going to come in. So this guy had a daughter who was having such dreams and other dreams, and he took that seriously. It's real then, blah, 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 what do we do? They always want to know, what do we do? And panicked people, it's very difficult. Even if you give them a primer, read these 3 pages, they don't want to do that. They can't do that. I just need to have my answer right now. Well, you can't do that to me. There's 7 billion people on the planet.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, that's...
yeah.
Quick question from the chat room. How should we interpret the Zeta's prediction on the announcement last October? Zeta's quote, "We are indeed getting closer to discovering Nibiru. It will not be long now." Question coming from a chat room person. It's been 5 months.
Yeah.
My immediate response to that would be the Prong.
Sure. Yeah. Well, humans are involved in all of this. The Zetas are not in control, and the Council of Worlds wants to operate through humans, with aliens, so even anonymous, when they hack to get information, and they're teleported into some computer room, so they can pull this information out, and they're teleported back out. It's a human-alien alliance, etc. But nevertheless, the aliens are not in there just calling the shots and say, okay, today's Tuesday, we're going to blah, blah, blah. They don't do that. This is our schoolhouse. We're all supposed to follow our soul, lessons and learn to care for each other, and there's a lot of interaction. So, well, then we had Trump elected, and that went well, as according to plan, because it was real. It was not election fraud. Any election fraud that was done by the Hillary crowd, not the Trump guys. And basically, they just set the counts to be real. So Trump gets in the White House, and look at the attacks. It's just massive assault, because the people that want the cover-up to continue, and the Bush-Hillary people, who people call a criminal cabal, because the money laundering that went on in the Clinton Foundation, and all the cocaine that George Herbert was dragging in when he was president, or over the CIA, and et cetera, and even marching into Iraq to try to snatch the oil in 2003, just before W thought that Nibiru would pass. All of this is criminal, and it's being set right behind the scenes, by secret military courts. The military is in charge of the U.S. So when you have this amount of scrambling and arm wrestling going on, it's unpredictable. And if it's in human hands, as the Zetas often say, it cannot be predicted with accuracy. So obviously, things have been slowed down, but they've been allowed to increase gradually. Have you noticed the earthquakes are going up? The bow tension is going, and the EMP. Let me tell you, personal EMP. The astonishing reports that I'm getting from the bow tension in the North American continent. I had my water heater and all the electric light bulbs in the basement blew out simultaneously. There was somebody nearby in Baraboo who said his TV set in the guest room went on. His smoke detector began beeping wildly. The lights flickered on and off, just like out of that movie Close Encounters of the Third Kind, etc.
Right.
And then after that, his batteries all failed on his iPhone, etc. Then somebody in Maine, they were charging their cell phones. They're up on a mountaintop, and this guy says, my phone starts ringing, and it's my wife's phone right on the table there. She didn't dial me, but it just decided to call me. And then they had another episode where it went the other direction, because they were both plugged in, charging, and the phone got excited in the send and receive areas, and they were calling each other unbidden. So if you find that people say, well, you called me at 2 a.m, and you say, no, I didn't. Maybe you did. Maybe your cell phone did. This is where we're at now. So they can't keep denying, but they will always have, for the weak and faint at heart, they will have excuses where they say, oh, no, it's not happening at all, because there's a certain number of people that will just, flip out and have a heart attack or something, and they have to deny. So you're going to have, as the truth comes out, at the same time you're going to have denial firming up and shouted louder and louder, and that's to be expected.
Well, truth shall prevail in that one, and I'm not talking about the debate between fake news and real news. I'm talking about actual truth, which is measurable by whether it's true or not. Okay, so that has a way of rising to the top, and I know that Zeta Talk and PulseShift.ning.com have been doing their best effort over the last many years, getting the truth out there. Now, a lot of people are finding that those websites very helpful. I'm getting a lot of feedback from our social media on our network here too, that the PulseShift.ning.com and ZetaTalk.com are the reliable places to go to research Nibiru and Earth changes. So that's good to hear as well.
It is good to hear. Yeah.
Well, great show,
we're
Nancy.
at the end of our hour.
Thank you very much.
Yeah. Thank you for having me on again. Yeah. All righty. Talk to you in a month. Take care, Andrew.
Thanks so
Bye-bye.
much. Bye. This has been the Zeta Report here on USA Emergency Broadcasting Network. We're live first Mondays of every month. If you want to look at our history, you can check us out on Spreaker.com/user/USAEBN. The YouTube for this episode will be up the Tuesday after immediately following Tuesday, or the day after this show. Thanks to Nancy Leder of ZetaTalk.com and poleshift.ning.com for calling in. You can check out our website at usaebn.org. Keep your eyes on the sky and stay safe, everybody.